I did get called, texted, and emailed by multiple sources, which was great. As soon as I confirmed the appointment, the AI sent me a thing and they said, "What are you looking for?" I told them, and they said, "Oh, well, we don't have a one bedroom show, but you'll be able to see a two bedroom." And then it asked me my yearly income. So they were pre qualifying me before I got there, which again, not a problem. But tell me why. It felt very invasive, right, at that time. I was not expecting it. I had not been asked that on 100 other shops that I've done over the years. This was the first time, so it kind of put me back in offsetting. Like, I instantly thought, "Oh my gosh, should I accidentally shop an income restricted property?" Nope, I didn't. They were just trying to pre-qualify me. I don't even know what they did with that information because the AI never responded.
Hello, welcome to the Rooms with Ronald podcast, brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Ronald Harrington. In 2023, I set an intention to shop 100 apartment communities to see how leasing was evolving around the country. Rooms with Ronald was born out of that experience. In this series, I share my experiences and engage in meaningful conversations with other professionals in the industry as we discuss all things related to leasing and marketing. Join in as we expand the Rooms with Ronald experiment.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Rooms with Ronald. I'm your host, Ronald Harrington, and today we are diving into my October mystery shops. Now, I get asked a lot, "Ronald, why do you mystery shop, and what are you looking for?" And for me, I mystery shop because I want to see the experience. I want to see how you handle objections. I want to see, what your vibe is. I'm not looking to see the granite countertops because I'm actually a firm believer that every apartment's the same. It's four walls and nothing more. Like, I could put photos up of your apartment and someone else's apartment in the same market, and you're probably not going to be able to tell me the difference. So this month I shopped 5 properties, and ironically, they all happen to be garden style in an area that I've shopped before. But this was 5 brand new management companies that I haven't shopped this year, and I really wanted to see what that was like. And for me, the mission was simple. What is the modern leasing experience really like for our customers? And here's what happened. I got a whole bouquet of results, from high-tech charm to low-energy chaos. Now, here's what happened on these 5 tours. I had an average tour time of 24.8 minutes, which is up from what I have had. So that's good, with my longest being 40 minutes and my shortest being 15. I was shown an average of 1.6, so 1 to 2 apartments per property during this time, which is very in line with what I'm seeing, which is actually a good thing in my eyes. I had 2 phone calls out of the 5, which has not happened lately, but 2 of them actually called me, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. No one talked about the office staff. No one talked about the maintenance team. Only one mentioned resident event. So building that sense of community was not there. Okay. Now, however, here's the kicker. Out of these 5 tours, 4 of them asked me to apply today, which is miraculous because up until this point, I hadn't had 4 the whole year. So to see that 4 of them asked me to apply today, we're heading in the right direction. Now, I think part of that is because 3 of them out of the 5 are offering a concession of some sort. But, guys, we're seeing this now. I'm finally getting more and more people asking me to apply in the office, which is amazing. Now, we do have some work to do on that front, but we are making directions. So the other thing, I want to point out and we're going to talk about is kind of using those 5 senses throughout the tours. So let's start with the first property, okay, where technology and transparency met and kind of forgot to invite connection, though. So here we are. It started great, right? I went online, I put in my guest card. I got, on this screen, confirmation that my tour was confirmed. I was so excited. However, I went to check my email and no email confirmation came through. No text came through. So then that's where the doubt set in. Did I book my appointment? But lo and behold, shortly after, about 2 hours after I put in my guest card, I got an email. Not an email, I got a phone call. I actually got a phone call from a real live leasing agent. I know. The earth stopped. So the leasing agent calls me, confirms, tells me her name, wanted to confirm my tour, says she saw my guest card come through online. And this is what she did well. She goes, I would love for you to call me back so I can help curate the perfect apartment for you during your tour time. I said, oh my gosh, this was professional. It was warm. It was welcoming. And it was very proactive, considering the fact that most people don't do that. So I was excited. I was like, okay, cool. I unfortunately did not get to call her back because I was super busy that day after she called and time slipped away. So I arrived to the property. I get a phone call 15 minutes before as I'm driving to the property with the voicemail wanting to confirm it. Finally, I get the text message that says your appointment is confirmed 10 minutes before I had to go. So if I was waiting for that confirmation, then we would have been in trouble because I wouldn't have made it on time. So I arrived to the property, and when I arrived, she greeted me by name. She knew she was waiting for me, which was so exciting. But then she immediately let me know that she didn't think I would show up since I hadn't returned her phone call. Nothing says welcome like a little passive aggressive preamble, right? Now, here's the thing. She had options. She relied solely on the phone call. She could have texted me, she could have emailed me, and I might have responded, right? You never know what that person's doing. So for her to be like, oh, I'm so glad you showed up. I didn't think you would. I did feel that was a little passive aggressive. So she, kind of did her qualifying questions. What are you looking for? The size of apartment, all of those things, which I thought, okay, cool. We have to do this. But this is where it got interesting. We got taken over to what I call the big screen, the magic screen. And this is where technology worked, right? She went in, she said, okay, here's our 1-bedroom floor plans. She showed me all the different 1-bedrooms. I got to see, the size, the price, how many was available, and got to play around with it. And so we saw the 3 to 4, maybe 5 different options of floor plans. And so we said, okay, here's where you're going to touch, which one of these is speaking to you. And so I narrowed it down to the floor plans, to the 2 that I thought would speak to me, that were within my price point, within kind of what I was looking for. And so I was like, okay, cool. So she takes her iPad with her and she says, okay, let's start with the amenities. So we start to see the amenities, and that's super cool. She explains to me about the pool. She explains to me about the clubhouse. We go into the gym. And, that was a little rushed because we had made a connection about my love to work out. We were talking about how I added 30 minutes of cardio every day to my exercise routine because I didn't care about the floor preference because that's just extra steps. So when we got to the gym, she should have picked up on that clue a little bit to realize, like, okay, he's probably going to want to spend some time in here and really allow me to fit the space, right? And she told me it wasn't that busy, and here's the peak times and things like that. And here's where they're thinking about adding XYZ, like a stair stepper and some heavier weights, because they listen to their residents. So that was a nice touch, but I wish she would have allowed me to feel or encouraged me to go try the elliptical, to go try the treadmill, something like that, to touch things. And then we saw a model. And so she wanted to point out the differences. And in the model, as we're like kind of going through, she's asked me about the space. She asked me what my deal breakers were. And I told her and things like that. Now, we then, transition. She's like, okay, let's go to the iPad and look. So we pull up the iPad. She's like, here's some units we can go see. And she starts to point out like corner units and these kinds of things. And this unit has 3 windows and all of those fun things, right? Great. So she was like, let's go grab an umbrella in case it rains. I was like, oh, I looked at the weather app. I think we're good. And we were. So we walked the like 5 steps to the apartment and we go in and she lets me into this brand new apartment that they probably just gotten back from construction recently because it still was, construction. It needed a touch up clean, as I like to call it. And she kind of let me feel the space. She didn't highlight anything. She didn't highlight my needs or my wants. She kind of just stood in one spot. And so that was fine. We talked about my dog in the apartment, and she loved my dog so much she asked his name. Um, and then she kind of forgot about him, right? Um, and this is also the thing that really stood out to me is she kept saying she's not a used car salesperson. I'm not going to force you into a decision. I'm not a used cars person. I believe in transparency. I believe in transparency. I'm not a used cars person. She probably told me that 3 to 4 times. So we saw one floor plan, and then I'm like, oh, okay, I really like this floor plan compared to the other one. I felt like the closet space was better. And she's like, okay, do you want to go see this other unit? The only difference is it has 3 windows. And I was like, I don't think so. She's like, are you sure? Because it has 3 windows. So I felt like I had to go see this unit because she was pushing it onto me to see this third window in the bedroom. Now we get there and it wasn't it was a window. The exact same floor plan, just a little bit more natural light. And this is when she says to me, so do you spend more time in the bedroom or do you spend more time in like the living space, the living room? And I said, oh, I'm more of a living room. I only use the bedroom usually when I sleep. So she's like, oh, so that extra window really doesn't add anything for you. And I was like, right. If she would have asked that in the first place, we wouldn't have had to go to this apartment. We could have saved some time and, we could have saved 2 flights of stairs. But we were there. And so I said, okay, she asked me some questions. Well, what I liked is she had her iPad. We went over the numbers. She crunched the numbers for me in my favor, right? Here's the numbers, all of that. She focused so much, though, on their special of 2 months free versus my preferences. And then when she was crunching the numbers, she was crunching it as if I was going to divide out the special over the 2 months, like the 2 month special over the 12-month lease term. But that's not maybe how I would have done it. Because what they do is they add that total concession amount up front. So then I, as the resident, have to monitor it, which then gets messy when you set up automatic payments. So maybe kind of preferencing how would you do this versus so much of how she thinks I want to do it. It would have really helped her do it. Then we kind of talked about hotels because, I love hotels and she was an eye doctor. And then it fell flat. While there was a lot of great moments that she could have really built that connection and show that she cared, she didn't. It was very selfish. She went through the whole thing, right? She hit every box on the shop. And even at the end, she asked me to apply for it in the office. But it felt robotic. It felt forced and it didn't feel natural most of the time. Transparency was there. I knew everything up front. Just that connection wasn't there. So what I always say is transparency builds trust, but empathy builds leases. So that was our first one, right? And then it took her about 48 hours to follow up with me in an email. Besides, like, here's what we talked about, here's the link to the application to check in. And even then, it was a phone call. So you called me 3 times and I haven't returned your phone call at this point. So why wouldn't you not text me or email me to check it in? And if you waited 48 hours, you probably already lost me because I'm going to lease somewhere else. So that was the first property of the day. Then we get to the second property. This property is an 18-minute tour. Now, everything up until I arrived to the property was a chatbot. I could tell you from the get-go what software they used and how it was timed. There wasn't a single human interaction. There wasn't anything. It was chatbot. And here's what I found very interesting. So I arrived to this property, and it's two properties kind of together just across the street. And I've worked at properties like this. Um, but I just booked an appointment online, and their website is a combined property. So I didn't know if I was going to property A or property B. And so I would say the names, but that would give it away. So it told me to go here, but it says, if you're going to meet at property A, go to this entrance, which really confused me because I don't know which one I did. So I went into where I thought was the right, and I got in, not a single person said hello or acknowledged me. And so finally I said, hi, I'm here for a tour. They never said, they just said, okay, let me grab your ID. Few clicks. Okay, let's just get this over with. This is what we're doing. Here's the offer, things like that. Not a lot of discovery. What are you looking for? None of that. It was just, I have to do this. So she was like, okay, so let's go ahead and go. I'm gonna leave your ID here. And she was like, so we're gonna drive to the property. So they don't have a golf cart. Get in your car. This is what you can just wait right here. I'm gonna be in this car. You're gonna follow me to the property. And I said, okay, cool. Very precise in those details. I knew what kind of car she was gonna have her flashers on, where to park, all of that. So there wasn't a lot of confusion there. We then drive to the property. And I mean, there's dumpsters all over. There's trash on the property. I saw a couple mattresses. Nothing crazy, right? Cool. So she was like, okay, this is our renovated apartment. And I walk in, and it was very nice. But it wasn't ready. The apartment was not ready. I mean, there was dead bugs on the floor. So you walk in, and it had that stale smell, right? That it had been sitting for a while, not with a lot of circulation. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I, again, walk around. What does she do? She sits or stands in one spot. And we kind of come back, and she's like, oh, are you a gamer? Because there was this little spot that I was trying to envision my stuff. And she's like, are you a gamer? And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm not. I'm like, I'm going to put a desk there. And we talked about my curio cabinets and things like that. And here's what I love, though, right? This apartment was renovated. And she said, not only are renovated units come with microwaves. Okay. Now, that is a very 1980s selling tactic, right? Talking about the microwaves. Because when microwaves first came out, they were expensive. And when you had an apartment, if your apartment came with a microwave, you were special. You were high end at that point. Now, so much that to point it out isn't that big of a deal because you can go and get a microwave for $40, $50. I've done it several times when I moved around. So the fact that she honed in on that really kind of, was like, oh, that's probably not the best selling tactic. She built no connection with me. She built no rapport. There was a few light attempts, are you a gamer? No. No. What to do for work? What brings you to the area? Then we get back to the office, and she starts to go over everything, and she hands me a piece of paper that kind of talks about their qualifications, which is a copy of a copy of a copy, so it's really blurry. So I start to read it, and the property name on it isn't the property in the mass. So they've taken it from maybe a sister property or someone else, and they haven't updated it, which I thought was odd. She knew I had a dog. She never showed me the dog park. I saw it when I drove out. I didn't see any amenities. She didn't talk about any amenities. She didn't talk about maintenance. She didn't talk about office staff. Literally, was just going through the motions. Do you want to start the application? If you apply for this unit, you'll get this special. She asked for it. Again, she did everything right, but it was robotic. It was low energy, and it was very forced. They were relying so much on automation that they could have just made it a self-guided tour. And let's talk about those papers, guys. Making sure that what you hand to a prospect is a representation of you, your brand, and your property. So a blurry photocopy screams that you don't care. things like that. You spend big monies. The quote, she emailed me the quote, but she printed it out to me. She took a snippet of the screen. So there wasn't a button to like print a quote. It was a snippet of a screen. Um, so yeah, here's my takeaway from that. Automation is effective, but it's not as effective as connection. There's no shortcut for being sincere. Now we get to property 3. And this was a 15-minute tour, and it was about as courteous as a conveyor belt. I'm just going to say it. I get to the property, I walk into the property, and the first thing I see is someone sitting off to the side in a little office helping somebody. So I kind of walk in a little bit more, and from the back office, someone yells, "Hi, how can I help you?" Always a great first impression, right? Like you're not even standing up to greet me yet. Um, and I said, "Oh, I'm here for a tour." And so she stands up and starts to walk toward, she's like, "Oh yeah, let me get you with," and then sees that that leasing agent was with somebody. That is not teamwork, right? Like, you don't think if that person was standing there, like sitting there, that somebody walked in and didn't greet me because they were just sitting there? No, like, so I was like, oh, she doesn't want to help me instantly. So she pulls me into the office. She's writing stuff. She pulls me up on the screen. She's like, "Yeah, you're so and so." And I'm like, "Absolutely, I am." And so we're going through those motions, right? She talks about my dog. She gets all the information that she needs. Um, Whispered, those kinds of things, right? And then she said, "Okay, we're going to go on the tour." And so we do. She's like, "Let me go get the golf cart." So the golf cart's not out, it's in a garage. So I'm standing outside the office, like waiting for her to go get this golf cart, which again is odd because I'm like, oh, when she coming? So I see her backing out of the garage and then like she disappeared for a second. So and then on the golf cart, she is very detailed. She was like, "We only have one style of one bedrooms. So you've seen one, you've seen them all. The difference is some might have carpet, some may not have carpet in the living room, XYZ," right? And I'm like, okay, cool. So we get to the apartment and it's a model. And I was like, cool, this is great. It's clean, it's beautiful. I start, do they all come with these double closets? Again, because she hasn't asked what's important to me, or things like that. And she again stands in one spot while I walk around. So she's not highlighting anything in the apartment, not adding any value on this tour. Then we kind of like are about to leave, and she was like, "Oh, do you want to take any photos or videos?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that's a great idea." So I start to take some photos, and she, when I come her, she's like, "Oh, let me get out of the way." She doesn't want to be in them, which is fine. Her energy, though, flat, flat as flat can be. And then, she takes me back to the apartment and she's like, "Ugh, what kind of dog did you have again?" And I told her, never showed me a gym, never showed me the pool, never talked about the pool or anything like that or the amenities. Literally only showed me the apartment. And this felt very forced. Like, because remember when I walked in, she was trying to push me off to someone else. So I thought maybe she wasn't a manager and assistant manager, because sometimes in my experience, they don't like to show apartments because they're not leasing people, right? We get back to the office. She hands everything to me. And then I see, because she hasn't introduced herself yet, I see she is a leasing agent. The peak of connection was when she asked my dog's name. That was it. Um, there was no urgency to apply. She didn't even ask me to apply. She was like, "Okay, here you go. Let me know if you have any questions. Here's what I want you to think about." It wasn't bad. She was pleasant. It just wasn't memorable, right? There was nothing that stood out to me that was like, yes, I want to live here. Think about it like this. It's like ordering oatmeal when the menu had pancakes, and I love pancakes. It fills the need, right? The oatmeal fills the need for hunger, but it doesn't make me rave about the breakfast. Okay. So that's it, right? Like, you can be okay. You can check the box on the mystery shots, But if you're just average and you're just standard and not memorable, I'm going to have a hard time living with you. Then we get to property 4 of the day, right? And this was so scripted. Uh, I got a confirmation email and I got a confirmation text from the AI. Hadn't talked to anybody. And so I walk in and I'm walked in and someone's like, "Oh, how can I help?" I was like, "Oh, I'm here for her." She's like, "Okay, I'll be right with you." And then she gets up and says, "Go have a seat right over here." And she walks into the manager's office and she's like, "Oh, someone's here for a tour." Okay. So I'm like, great. We now have wait list. Um, Finally someone comes out and says, "Okay, I can help you." And they were nice, they were professional, but it was very robotic. Kind of like in the way of I've done this 900,000 times today. So he gathered all my info, confirmed my price range, asked about my pets, showed me the different options. Said, unfortunately, all I have is to show is this one bedroom. We went through check, 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 right? Oh, yes, my system's slow. Didn't really build anything. I never knew his name, no business card. And then I realized halfway through the tour, I didn't even like know anything about him. Now we're walking. He's like, "So what brings you to this area?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm coming for work." He's like, "What do you do for work?" And I was like, "Oh, I work in XY industry." Oh, okay. And then we go on. Now, this property was kind of hard to find because they have a big old banner outside to kind of turn in because it's not like on a normal road. It like sits behind a building. And the banner was still advertising summer specials. If you move in by this date, which the date had already passed, it was covering the monument sign. So luckily my GPS kind of took me there, right? So I was like, this is not off to a great start. But what I do appreciate about this model that I saw, because I only saw a model, was that they had a really cute signage throughout the thing. So it said, like on the couch, Netflix and chill here. And then, like when you went into the washer and the dryer, it said, no pants, no problems. All homes come with laundry, which was cute. Then I got to go into the bedroom and it said, this room's fit for royalty. Both the king and queen will fit in here. And I love those signages. It kind of was like, oh, I'm almost on a self guided tour because, again, the person just standed in one spot. Um, and then I was like, oh, are all the one bedrooms closet about this size? And they reiterated that it was. And I was like, oh, because, again, you did not know that closet was important to me because you didn't ask me that. So this was the solution. Well, you could come back next week and I could show you a 2-bedroom. It's just not ready. That's a smart way to get me back in the door. Absolutely. My follow up question was, is it in my price range? And is it going to be one that I can actually move into? But it was not delivered with enthusiasm. And then as we were walking back, I had asked some other questions that he did not have the answer to at all. And I was like, oh, okay. So then he's like, let me check. So he does check when we get back to the office and he comes back and he tells me about it. And all of those things. And I thought that's cool. He told me he was, he's a roving leasing person. They all kind of go together after a while, which I totally understand that. Totally do. But it just was very robotic. It could have been a self-guided tour. He showed me the gym. He didn't walk me over to the dog, but when we got me, he's like, oh, you have a dog, right? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, there's the dog park and points it out to me. Doesn't take me to see it or anything like that. While he had the right lines, there was just no energy behind it. It was kind of like, to me, watching karaoke night at a company retreat. And we've all been there, right? You appreciate the effort, but you still want to grab the mic because they are off key. This is my advice when it comes to scripts because I know that this was a scripted tour. They're the training wheels, right? They give you the foundation. They're not shackles. This is what happens when leasing feels robotic, prospects disengage. Okay. So keep that in mind. Then we get to property number 5. And I show up to property number 5 just to realize property number 4 still has my ID. So I had to drive back and get my ID. This property at property number 5 was a little bit unique. I did get called, texted, and emailed by multiple sources, which was great. As soon as I confirmed the appointment, the AI sent me a thing and they said, "What are you looking for?" I told them, and they said, "Oh, well, we don't have a 1 bedroom show, but you'll be able to see a 2 bedroom." And then it asked me my yearly income. So they were pre-qualifying me before I got there, which again, not a problem. But tell me why. It felt very invasive, right, at that time. I was not expecting it. I had not been asked that on 100 other shops that I've done over the years. This was the first time, so it kind of put me back in offsetting. Like, I instantly thought, "Oh my gosh, did I accidentally shop an income restricted property?" Nope, I didn't. They were just trying to pre-qualify me. I don't even know what they did with that information because the AI never responded. And then I they were calling themselves this in one number. And then I get a text from a different number and a different person who called it a different name, who used the abbreviated name. I would have known that. And then the leasing agent also called me in the morning. So I had all of these like different things going on before I even got to the property. And then so that last number that responded to me, I texted that I was going to be late because I had to go back and get my ID. No response. So I get to the property, I walk in, and I instantly am overwhelmed with their scent, their signature scent or whatever they have going in the office. We have to get better about that. I mean, like, it really, like, I had a headache, like my nose started running. It was overwhelming. And as someone who is sensitive to scents, I find this more often or not, right? Like, so just kind of keep that in mind as you're walking through properties. Like, is this overwhelming? Could someone who is sensitive to scent have a problem with that? Um, and I was like, this does not smell like luxury to me. Please, because I'm dying. I started to go. So the leasing agent finally ushers me over. We get going. She was very kind, very friendly, very all over the place. She pulled up one thing. She goes, "Oh, sorry, we have 2 different systems." So she goes back over here. She asked me, solid questions like, what am I looking for? Wrote everything down, but never really tailored anything to me. And she kept mentioning that I could only see 2 floor plans per day, right? I can only show you 2 floor plans. I can only show it, but never really explain it's a policy or, we really only want to show you 2 floor plans because we know how overwhelming it can be when you're finding an apartment. But then she proceeded to pull out 5 different floor plans and laid them on the floor on the desk, and started writing down everything: water, sewer, trash, price, specials, all of those. Then she got a little confused about, which apartments were available for the specials and things like that. My thing is like, why not just take the time to lay all 5 out in front of me and say, okay, here's the 5. Now keep in mind, we're only going to be able to see 2. I only want to show you 2 apartments today, so you don't have to be overwhelmed by the choices. Here's the differences in the floor plans. Here's the townhomes. Here's this. Which 2 are speaking to you? Or, hey, better yet, you mentioned that you love closets, right? You need closets. You have lots of clothes. Here's the 5. These 2 have the largest closet space. So we might want to consider looking at those today. Or this one has the largest. This one might fit your need. Whatever. XYZ. However you do it, right? But you took the time to write everything on all 5 different floor plans, but you're only going to show me 2. That was a little much for me. Now, I do love, like, when we were talking about it in one of the apartments we saw, she did tie the comment about my lots of clothes and why I need closet space back to about, at least you have a washer and dryer in the unit for all those clothes. I will give you points for that. You listened. You knew I had clothes. You tied it back into having a washer and dryer. You did a benefit tie-in, and I love that. You may have not known that you did it, but you did it. You created the urgency for the October special. If I move in by this date, encouraged me to apply. So I love that. Again, she kind of stood in the things. And so we saw, two bedrooms. And I said, oh, well, if I'm interested in one bedroom, which one of these closets is going to be most like a one bedroom closet? She went and looked. She did great. We saw the amenities coming back. And I left my papers in the office. And so when we went to saw the amenities, she said, so are you going to come back to the office or are you just going to go? Like, are you good? I said, oh, well, let me go back to the office. Let's crunch some numbers. Maybe you can send me a quote. I will say that the bones of a good experience were there. She was friendly. She was nice. But the structure was just a little buried underneath the noise. Too many messages, too many smells, too little focus on what it is that I want. It was just like, this is a large property. Let me just go. Consistency and clarity matter as much as charm, right? So I want you to be precise. I want you to be that. If you can't build trust when there's chaos, okay? So keep that kind of thing in mind. Well, guys, there you have it. We have went through the 5. Here are kind of my quick takeaways. Property 1, transparent but disconnected. Property 2, automated to a fault. No connection. Property 3, pleasant yet forgettable. Property number 4, polished but robotic, relied on the script. And then the 5th and final property, energetic but overwhelming. Takeaways that you can implement today. Here it was. Tech should enhance the experience, not replace it. And I felt like a lot of these times tech was replacing the experience. Every prospect wants to feel seen. I want you to know about me. I want you to make a connection with me. I just don't want to be scanned. Energy without empathy is just noise. You can have all the energy you want, but if it's not empathetic and you're not making connection, it's just background noise. The best tours are built on curiosity and not just closing techniques. You take that curiosity and you turn it into closing techniques. Remember, every prospect has a story, right? Get to know that story so you can make your closing easier. It isn't about just selling space. It's about belonging. If you can't find that sense of belonging, then that prospect's not going to listen to you. There you have it, guys. 5 tours, 1 day. We got 4 people asking me to apply, which is more than we've had all year, which means something's shifting in the air. It's probably because vacancies are rising, concessions are rising, and now we are putting the emphasis on the actual art of closing. Were they good closes? Maybe, maybe not. But until next time, guys, you've been listening to Rooms with Ronald. I'm your host, Ronald Harrington. Happy leasing. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. I hope I left you with some fresh ideas or a new perspective. Leasing and marketing are evolving rapidly, and Rooms with Ronald is committed to offering a place to hear about those changes. We also celebrate and acknowledge the fundamentals of exceptional service that will never go out of style. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, or subscribe. Visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our other exceptional industry podcasts, call pieces, and sponsorship opportunities.